In the beginning, before marble forums and marching legions, before emperors draped in purple and laws etched into bronze, there was a story told beside the Tiber River about twin brothers and a she-wolf. Romulus founded a small settlement in 753 BC on a cluster of hills in central Italy. Whether myth or memory, the tale reflects a deeper truth. Rome began as a fragile experiment, surrounded by rival tribes and influenced by the sophisticated Etruscans to the north and Greek colonies to the south. The early Romans borrowed, adapted, and endured. They overthrew their kings and established a republic, balancing power between elected magistrates and the Roman Senate. This republic was not a democracy in the modern sense, but it was revolutionary for its time. It created a political culture that prized civic duty, military service, and an unbreakable belief in destiny. As Rome expanded across the Italian peninsula, it encountered powerful enemies. Across the Mediterranean lay Carthage, a maritime empire whose general Hannibal would march elephants across the Alps. The Punic Wars were existential struggles, testing Rome's resilience. Those cities burned and armies fell. Rome's system of alliances and its relentless manpower eventually prevailed. Carthage was destroyed, and Rome emerged as the dominant power in the western Mediterranean. Soon it expanded into Egypt, into Gaul, and into Britain. With each conquest, wealth poured into the capital, but so did inequality and political tension. Ambitious generals began to realize that loyalty from soldiers could translate into political power. None embodied this shift more dramatically than Julius Caesar. A brilliant commander, he conquered Gaul and gained immense popularity. When ordered by the Senate to relinquish command, he crossed the Rubicon River in defiance, igniting civil war. His victory made him dictator for life. But his accumulation of power alarmed traditionalists. On the Ides of March in 44 BC, he was assassinated. The Republic, already weakened, would never recover. Out of the chaos rose his adopted heir, Augustus, through careful political maneuvering and decisive military action, including the defeat of Cleopatra and her ally, Mark Antony. Augustus became Rome's first emperor in all but name. He maintained the facade of republican institutions while holding ultimate authority. Under his rule began the Pax Romana, 2 centuries of relative stability and prosperity. Roads stretched across continents, aqueducts carried fresh water into cities, and trade networks linked Britain to Syria. The empire's capital, Rome, became a metropolis of over 1 million people. Monumental architecture, like the Colosseum, showcased both engineering brilliance and the brutal spectacle that entertained the masses. Yet beneath the grandeur, contradictions simmered. Emperors varied wildly in character. Nero became infamous for extravagance and persecution. In contrast, Trajan expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent, while Marcus Aurelius ruled with philosophical restraint. During this era, in a remote province called Judea, a Jewish preacher named Jesus Christ was crucified. His followers spread a faith that would, centuries later, transform the empire from within. The Rome of marble temples and triumphal arches appeared invincible, but its greatest challenges would come not only from beyond its borders, but from changes within its own soul. As centuries passed, the strain of governing such a vast territory grew heavier. Political instability, economic disruption, and constant threats along the frontiers marked the 3rd century crisis. Emperors rose and fell with alarming speed, often elevated by the army and discarded just as quickly. To restore order, Diocletian reorganized the empire, dividing authority among multiple rulers in a system known as the Tetrarchy. He reformed taxation and strengthened borders, but also launched one of the last major persecutions of Christians. His reforms temporarily stabilized the state, yet they also acknowledged a profound reality. The empire had grown too vast for one man to rule alone. A generation later, power consolidated again under Constantine the Great. After emerging victorious in civil wars, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance to Christians. He founded a new capital on the site of ancient Byzantium, renaming it Constantinople. Strategically located between Europe and Asia, the city symbolized a shift in gravity from west to east. Christianity, once persecuted, became entwined with imperial authority. Despite these transformations, pressures mounted. In 378 AD, at the Battle of Adrianople, Roman forces suffered a devastating defeat. The psychological impact was immense. The once invincible legions had been broken by migrating peoples. In 410, the unthinkable occurred. Rome itself was sacked by Byzantine. Though the city was no longer the administrative capital, its fall sent shockwaves through the Mediterranean world. The empire effectively split into two entities, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The western half struggled with economic decline, political fragmentation, and relentless incursions. In 451, Roman forces and their allies halted Attila in Gaul, but the reprieve was temporary. Finally, in 476 AD, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed the last Western emperor. The imperial regalia was sent east, and the Western Roman Empire ceased to exist as a political reality. Yet Rome did not truly fall. In Constantinople, the Eastern Empire endured for nearly 1,000 more years. It preserved Roman law, Greek philosophy, and Christian theology. Its scholars safeguarded classical knowledge that would later inspire the Renaissance. In the West, the idea of Rome continued to shape ambitions. Centuries later, when Charlemagne was crowned emperor in 800 AD, he invoked the memory of Rome to legitimize his rule. Even in 1453, when Mehmed II captured Constantinople, he claimed the mantle of Caesar. The Roman Empire's history is not merely a chronicle of conquests and collapses. It is the story of law codes that underpin modern legal systems, of languages that evolved into Spanish, French, and Italian, of engineering feats that still stand in stone and concrete. It is the story of a republic that transformed into an autocracy, of pagan gods giving way to a monotheistic faith, of a city that became an idea larger than geography. Rome's legions no longer march, its emperors no longer decree. Yet its legacy pulses through the foundations of Western civilization, from a mythical wolf's den to a vast dominion spanning 3 continents. The Roman Empire shaped the world in ways that remain visible. Every time we open a law book, walk a paved road, or gaze upon the ruins of an ancient amphitheater, and imagine the roar of a crowd that once believed their empire would last forever. The transformation from republic to empire did not happen in a single dramatic stroke. It unfolded through ambition, fear, reform, and relentless war. After the assassination of Julius Caesar, Rome stood at a crossroads. Senators who had plunged their daggers into Caesar believed they were saving liberty. Instead, they unleashed another cycle of civil war. Power consolidated in the hands of a young and calculating era. Augustus understood something profound. Romans despised kings. The memory of tyranny from their early monarchy still haunted their political culture. So he avoided the title of king and instead accepted the name princeps, meaning first citizen. Behind that modest label lay immense authority. He controlled the legions, guided foreign policy, and held tribunician power that allowed him to veto decisions. Yet he maintained republican rituals. This careful balancing act marked the birth of the Roman Empire. Under Augustus and his successors, the empire entered a period later called the Pax Romana. This era brought relative stability across vast territories. Roads radiated outward from Rome like arteries from a heart, allowing troops, merchants, and messages to move with remarkable speed. Engineers built aqueducts that carried fresh water over miles of countryside. Amphitheaters rose in provincial cities, mirroring the grandeur of the Colosseum. The empire was not merely a political structure. It was a cultural network binding diverse peoples together. But the empire's stability depended heavily on the character of its rulers. After Augustus came the Julio-Claudian dynasty, a line marked by intrigue and excess. Nero, the last of that line, became infamous for his artistic obsessions and brutal suppression of dissent. When a massive fire consumed much of Rome in 64 AD, rumors spread that Nero himself had ordered it, though historians debate the truth. What is certain is that Nero blamed Christians, subjecting them to horrific persecutions. Following years of turmoil, A more stable line emerged, with emperors like Vespasian and his son Titus. Vespasian restored financial order and began construction of the Colosseum. Titus oversaw its completion and faced the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, which buried Pompeii and Herculaneum under ash. The 2nd century brought a succession often referred to as the Five Good Emperors, culminating in Marcus Aurelius. These rulers prioritized stability and adopted capable heirs rather than relying solely on bloodlines. During the reign of Trajan, the empire reached its maximum territorial extent. Markets thrived, and monumental architecture flourished, yet even at its zenith, challenges loomed. Rome's frontiers were long and vulnerable. Along the Rhine and Danube rivers, Germanic tribes pressed against imperial borders. In the east, the Parthian Empire contested Roman influence. Maintaining such vast defenses required enormous resources. Meanwhile, economic inequality deepened. Large estates dominated agriculture, while urban poor relied on grain distributions. Slavery, a cornerstone of Roman economy, created social tensions that occasionally erupted into revolts. The 3rd century ushered in crisis. Between 235 and 284 AD, more than 20 emperors ruled in rapid succession, many meeting violent ends. Plagues swept through cities, weakening populations and armies. Trade faltered. Breakaway states briefly emerged in Gaul and Palmyra, signaling fragmentation. The empire seemed on the verge of dissolution. Into this chaos stepped Diocletian, a soldier emperor. He recognized that centralized authority was insufficient for governing such a massive domain. He established the Tetrarchy, dividing rule among 4 leaders, to senior emperors and to junior ones. This system aimed to ensure orderly succession. Diocletian also restructured provinces, reformed taxation, and sought to stabilize currency. Yet his reign was marked by harsh policies, including intensified persecution of Christians. Though the Tetrarchy eventually faltered, it set the stage for the rise of Constantine the Great. After defeating rivals in a series of civil wars, Constantine made a pivotal decision. In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance throughout the empire. Christianity, once driven underground, emerged into public life. Constantine also founded a new capital in the east, transforming the ancient city of Byzantium into Constantinople. This city, strategically positioned between Europe and Asia, would become a beacon of wealth and culture. Its bustling harbors symbolized a shift in the empire's center of gravity. As the 4th century progressed, Christianity grew dominant. Pagan temples declined, and Christian bishops gained influence. Theodosius I eventually declared Christianity the official state religion. This transformation reshaped Roman identity, yet external pressures intensified. In 376 AD, Gothic tribes fleeing the Huns sought refuge within Roman borders. Mismanagement and mistreatment led to rebellion. The Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD resulted in a crushing Roman defeat and the death of Emperor Valens. The psychological impact was staggering. Rome's legions had been humbled by forces once considered inferior. By the early 5th century, the Western Roman Empire struggled to maintain cohesion. In 410 AD, Visigoths, led by Alaric, sacked Rome. Though the city was no longer the administrative capital, its symbolic importance made the event seismic. Over the following decades, Vandals, Suebi, and other groups carved territories out of Roman lands. In 476 AD, the Germanic leader Odoacer deposed the last Western emperor, Romulus. Augustus. The Western Roman Empire had effectively fallen. However, the Eastern Roman Empire endured. Centered in Constantinople, it preserved Roman law, including the later codification under Emperor Justinian. It maintained complex diplomacy, formidable defenses, and vibrant trade networks. While the West fragmented, the East carried forward Roman traditions for nearly a millennium more. The story of Rome is not merely one of rise and fall. It is a narrative of adaptation. From republic to empire, from paganism to Christianity, from Latin-speaking West to Greek-speaking East, Rome continually reinvented itself. Its legal principles influenced modern constitutions. Its language evolved into the Romance languages. Its architecture inspired generations. Even after political collapse in the West, the idea of Rome endured. Medieval rulers invoked its legacy. Renaissance scholars rediscovered its literature. Modern governments study its institutions. The Roman Empire's story remains one of humanity's most powerful lessons in ambition, resilience, and transformation. By the time the Western Roman Empire formally ended in 476 AD, the world that Rome had created did not simply vanish. Instead, it transformed. In the East, the empire centered in Constantinople continued to call itself Roman. Its citizens referred to themselves as Romans. Even though modern historians would later label their state the Byzantine Empire, this Eastern continuation preserved the imperial administration, Roman law, and a powerful sense of destiny that traced back to the age of Augustus. One of the most ambitious Eastern emperors was Justinian, the first determined to restore the old glory of a united Roman world. He launched military campaigns to reclaim lost Western territories. His generals, including the brilliant Belisarius, retook North Africa from the Vandals and Italy from the Ostrogoths. For a brief moment, the Mediterranean once again seemed like a Roman lake. But these reconquests were costly, draining resources and exposing the empire to new threats. Justinian's most enduring achievement was not territorial, but legal. He ordered the compilation of centuries of Roman law into a unified code, known as the Corpus Juris Civilis. This body of law would later influence legal systems across Europe and, indirectly, the foundations of modern Western jurisprudence. In Constantinople, Justinian also built the magnificent Hagia Sophia, a cathedral whose vast dome symbolized both imperial power and Christian faith. The Roman Empire, now deeply Christian, expressed its authority through theology as much as through legions. Yet even as Justinian dreamed of restoration, forces beyond the empire's borders were reshaping the world. In the 7th century, the rapid expansion of Islamic caliphates seized vast territories from both Rome and Persia. Syria, Egypt, and North Africa, long-standing Roman provinces, were lost. These were not merely peripheral lands. They were economic and cultural pillars. The Eastern Empire survived, but it was fundamentally altered, shrinking into a more compact, Greek-speaking state. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, the collapse of centralized Roman authority gave rise to new kingdoms. The Franks, Visigoths, and Lombards built realms upon former Roman soil. Yet even these barbarian rulers adopted Roman customs, minted coins with imperial imagery, and relied on Latin administration. In 800 AD, when Charlemagne was crowned emperor by the Pope in Rome, it signaled that the Roman imperial idea still held immense symbolic power. Though his empire differed greatly from that of ancient Rome, the title suggested continuity of belief that Roman authority could be revived in new forms. Back in Constantinople, emperors defended their realm against waves of invasions. Massive walls protected the city from Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, and later the Rus. Greek fire, a mysterious incendiary weapon, helped repel naval assaults. Through diplomacy, strategic marriages, and military resilience, the Eastern Empire endured for centuries after the West had fallen. Its scholars preserved classical Greek and Roman texts, safeguarding knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. But the empire faced internal struggles as well. Religious controversies divided populations. Disputes over the nature of Christ led to schisms. The iconoclast controversy in the 8th and 9th centuries pitted those who opposed religious images against those who defended them. These conflicts revealed the complex fusion of church and state. In the Roman imperial system, the emperor was not merely a political ruler. He was seen as God's representative on earth. In 1054, a growing divide between Eastern and Western Christianity culminated in the Great Schism. The Church in Rome and the Church in Constantinople formally separated, creating what would become the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox traditions. The unity that had once characterized the Christian Roman world fractured, mirroring political realities. The 11th and 12th centuries brought both revival and new danger. Under the Comnenian dynasty, the Eastern Empire experienced a military and economic resurgence. Trade flourished. particularly with Italian maritime republics. Yet this prosperity attracted outside interests. In 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, Western Crusaders, originally intent on reaching the Holy Land, turned against Constantinople itself. The city was sacked brutally. Churches were looted, relics stolen, and a Latin empire briefly established. For the first time, the Roman capital in the east fell to Christian forces, although Byzantine rulers eventually regained Constantinople in 1261. The empire never fully recovered. Reduced in territory and resources, it became increasingly vulnerable. Surrounding powers, especially the rising Ottoman Turks, pressed in by the 15th century. Constantinople stood as a shadow of its former grandeur, still magnificent in culture and history, but politically fragile. In 1453, Mehmed II laid siege to the city. Massive cannons battered its ancient walls. After weeks of resistance, Constantinople fell. The last Roman emperor died defending the city. With that, the political entity tracing its roots directly back to ancient Rome came to an end. And yet, even in defeat, Rome's legacy endured. The Ottomans adopted aspects of Roman administration. In Western Europe, the memory of Rome fueled the Renaissance, as scholars rediscovered classical art, literature, and philosophy. Roman law shaped emerging nation-states. The Latin language evolved into Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Concepts like republican governance, senates, and codified law traced their intellectual ancestry to Rome. Across the Atlantic centuries later, architects of the United States looked to Roman models when designing civic buildings and political structures. The very idea of a republic, balanced by checks and civic virtue, echoed Roman precedent. The story of Rome became both warning and inspiration, a testament to ambition and organization, but also to overreach and internal decay. The Roman Empire's journey from a cluster of huts along the Tiber to a dominion spanning 3 continents, from pagan temples to soaring cathedrals, from republic to autocracy and beyond, remains one of the most sweeping sagas in human history. It teaches that power can unite diverse peoples under shared law and infrastructure. Yet it also reveals how inequality, political instability, and external pressures can fracture even the mightiest state. Rome never truly disappeared. Its roads still form the foundations of European highways. Its legal principles underpin courts. Its literature continues to be read. Its ruins draw millions who walk beneath arches built 2,000 years ago. Empires rise and fall, but the Roman Empire became more than territory or throne. It became an idea, an enduring symbol of order, ambition, and the complex, often fragile nature of civilization itself.